The mid-90s was an uncharted time in gaming, where many upcoming releases were oftentimes discovered by who you knew or what publications you subscribed to. Getting insider info was pretty special. Oftentimes you might receive a special promotional package in the mail promoting the latest blockbuster release, or even get a sweet sampler disc with your favorite subscription service. When a game release is globally anticipated and slowly becomes that game of the year, bet your ass it will be marketed alongside the industry leader in fast food. All hail those golden arches. Around this time, McDonald's marketing division was firing on all cylinders. Happy Meals were on another level, but not for the taste. No, I wasn't much of a plain cheeseburger guy personally, I was more a chicken nugget connoisseur, yet even more so for those awesome Happy Meal prizes that came bundled with them. We've had some pretty amazing IPs make their way into McDonald's toy form, and Sonic the Hedgehog was no exception. In February of '94, McDonald's rolled out their Sonic 3 campaign, promoting the release of their latest blockbuster release, giving out some pretty sweet Sonic toys in their Happy Meals. Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, and Robotnik all received a toy. Looking back at them today, they were okay, but I always loved that they put some sort of minor engineering into them to give kids something to interact with. You could launch Tails across the room onto an imposing lunch table, or launch Sonic into a supersonic spin attack. Here stateside, Dr. Robotnik was even modeled around his Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog series look. The Sega and McDonald's crossover was a huge success, and interest in Sonic was at an all-time high. Yet after playing Sonic 3, I had so many unanswered questions. I was conflicted when it came to many of the story elements. Who exactly is this Knuckles guy? What exactly happened to the Death Egg? And why did so many plot points just sort of dissolve? Even though I clearly saw the Death Egg come crashing down, things felt so anticlimactic. Well, I would soon get my answers because late October that same year, I started seeing advertisements for another Sonic game. As I mentioned previously, unless you had an ear to the streets, there wasn't much material on the market for a Sega fan. It wasn't like a 10-year-old kid was going to drive themselves all around town, gaining some much needed intel on this new Sonic game. As that holiday season raged on, I would eventually find what I presumably assumed was Sonic 4 now on display at my local Toys R Us. However, it wasn't called Sonic 4, this was ironically titled Sonic and Knuckles, but why? Something felt fishy over at Sega, and I was all ears for the foreseeable future. Let's rewind a bit now for a second. Over at STI HQ, our team continued work on Sonic 3, incorporating many new ideas and concepts into their new project. One thing was vastly apparent: this project would demand far more manpower, and development time was stretching thin. Stages were far grander in scale, and ROM cartridges were far too small to contain a game this size. Not to mention, Sega wanted this released in time for that sweet upcoming McDonald's campaign here in the US. There was no way around it. Sonic 3 was now officially branching off into two separate releases, with the second act releasing now infamously as Sonic and Knuckles. Although these games would release separately, Sega still wanted these to feel like a single experience, and so the team would begin brainstorming ways to combine the two cartridges together. Sometime between the release of Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, programmers adopted a new way to add new content to an existing game. This would be accomplished by using an add-on peripheral. After finishing up production of Sonic 3, the team would begin theorizing ways to implement in a similar concept. The blueprints were then passed down to Sega's hardware division, and upon working around the new specs, presented us with the revolutionary lock-on adapter. This would allow the ROM data from the attached game to be read in conjunction with the adapter, allowing for new gameplay features, changes to existing game code, and data splicing from the two cartridges. Sega quickly went to work rewriting Sonic 3's existing code to be compatible with this future release. When attaching Sonic 3 to this nifty new adapter, we now get access to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, our combined titles with the full story intact. This additionally grants us access to all 14 zones across both cartridges, along with our two-tailed counterpart Tails returning to embark on the second half of our quest. All core features from Sonic 3 remain intact, and our save system now expands to 8 save slots, granting all 3 of our legendary heroes access to the full adventure. Yes, I'll come out and say it, Sega held Knuckles hostage as a primary selling point for Sonic and Knuckles. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, it made perfect sense. When a player utilizes lock-on technology with Sonic 2, data transfers through the circuitry once more, thus creating a new experience through the eyes of Knuckles the Echidna. Here's where things get interesting though. In the event we attempt to lock on any other Genesis title to the adapter, we are presented with the Blue Spheres minigame. What's surprisingly unique here is that each Genesis cartridge determines a different Blue Spheres layout corresponding to that cartridge's specific serial number. However, if you lock on the original Sonic the Hedgehog cartridge attempting to play as Knuckles, you will instead unlock all 134,217,728 unique stage layouts. So, with our adapter now in hand, how does the second half of our story unfold? After Sonic hands Eggman his ass once more, the Death Egg fails to lift off, imploding at the hands of our heroes, crushing down once more atop Angel Island. Now changing course, it touches down deep inside the lava reef region. Sonic follows in pursuit, finding his way through the heart of the island amongst the lush green terrains of Mushroom Hill. Just as Sonic begins to embark on new grounds, he spots Knuckles emerging from a hidden palace deep inside the Mushroom Hills. As Knuckles wanders off, looking for these new island invaders, Sonic jumps down and investigates this safe haven. He discovers an access point to the island's interior network. The hidden palace is the safe keep of the Master Emerald. As Sonic makes his way towards the Emerald's altar, he feels an unstable power surrounding him. Just then, a strong gravitational pull draws from within the Master Emerald, stripping Sonic of the newly recovered Chaos Emeralds. The 7 stones begin to flow with unstable, unconfined power, transforming them into a new state known as the Super Emeralds. With the Emerald's new radical raw power, Sonic can tap into a transcended super state known as the Hyper form. It's essentially this game's version of Super Saiyan 2, which to my recollection is the only time we've ever witnessed this form. Now, how to identify Hyper Sonic from Super Sonic is primarily by his drastically raised quills, while his body emanates the colors of the Super Emeralds. This power is so immense, it leaves behind an after image sparkling as he makes his new power felt. Tails can essentially achieve a hyper state also, maintaining his super aesthetic, but additionally allowing him to control the island's flickies as he harnesses the Emerald's new state. There are marginal differences in music and cutscenes throughout the combined adventure, and I believe the best way to still experience these are playing each separately, then combined. However, I like to focus on the new features Sonic & Knuckles presents us with. For starters, we now have 2 additional bonus stages, which spices things up a bit. To begin, we now have the slot machine, transporting us to a realm very similar to the location of the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 1. Still filled with bumpers and goals, you must be mindful to navigate through towards the center of the slots. It's a supercharged slot machine from Casino Night, filled with rings to rack up enough lives to stay in the game. The second and my personal favorite being the Glowing Spheres challenge that finds Sonic escaping a radical energy field flowing upwards, attempting to make quick work of our blue hedgehog. You can use the glow spheres to build momentum as you launch yourself higher through the maze that's accompanied by bumpers and flippers, turning this challenge into a Sonic Spinball-esque minigame. Special stages also return to form, now considerably harder compared to their Sonic 3 counterparts. This primarily due to incorporating in the all-new Yellow Sphere that acts as a spring to launch you across the playfield. The new layouts can overwhelm you at first, but I find playing these a few times will exploit the correct sequence of travel required to take and will ultimately guide you through the maze. Picking up where we last left off, we now journey into Mushroom Hills, which is technically the 7th zone of Sonic 3. It's an excellent halfway point filled with wacky gadgets and high-speed loops that brings us full circle with another foresty hilltop setting. The music here is a straight bop that complements the stage vibe quite well. It's hella fun bouncing across the giant shroom caps that would make Mario froth at the mouth. The sticky vines throughout is a nice touch, and you feel as if you witnessed the seasons change right before your eyes the further you progress. The boss fights with Eggman truly takes advantage of the additional lock-on features. Keep in mind it's integral to seek out the Super Emeralds early on here. If you explore both acts from top to bottom, you are capable of locating 9 access points for the special stages, granting you the opportunity to unlock Hypersonic from the opening zone. As we close out Act 2, Sonic manages to sneak aboard Eggman's airship, the Flying Battery. This stage has one of the best themes of the classic series with a complete banger of a musical score, especially Act 2. The stage itself is littered with trollish enemy placement, with exposed electrical fields spread throughout this warship that could test your patience. I tend to overgun these platforming segments more often than less, and wind up just eating the hazards completely. The stage has some magnificent platforming segments that are not only creative in execution, but also gives the player a perfect amount of challenge that rewards you every step of the way. It's extremely satisfying spinning about the ship's propeller system or running across the various wacky gadgets that powers the ship's infrastructure. As the Flying Battery gets decommissioned, Sonic crash lands onto Angel Island's deserts. Sandopolis is one of the most unique zone designs of Sonic 3. The big issue here, however, is that for the most part, the stage really tends to break up the pace. It absolutely deviates away from the traditional high-speed gameplay many other zones offer. before. Here you become more dependent on the stage props and set pieces to navigate your way through. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You ultimately need to think outside the box instead of rushing through, especially when you get to Act 2 and obstacles pile up. The inside of the pyramids can really become stress-inducing if it's not the ghosts that bully you every step you take, it's the many temple secrets and traps that will leave you for dead if you don't solve the sand puzzles quick enough. Again, this stage looks and captures the feel perfectly, it's just going to be a grind, so strap in. As you make your way through the Pharaoh's tomb, Sonic discovers he has managed to find his way into the interior of Angel Island's volcano, now the home of the decommissioned Death Egg. The entire zone is covered with badniks that seem to be refracting the crash site to revive the Death Egg. There are some pretty challenging segments that make it known that you are well into the later half of the game. Lava spews, as does fiery projectiles, and when the reef momentarily cools, the zone just emanates with color. There's so much quirky machinery that makes for some polished level design. The music in Act 2 gives off this tranquil melody, and as you eventually encounter Eggman, it becomes a downright cinematic event, giving chase across the reef for an endurance round, putting your reflexes to the test. As the temperature drops, the reef cools, opening a passage through the debris, leading our heroes back to Knuckles' hidden palace. Here we come face to face with our Echidna, who is now ready to take an ass whooping for all his trollish behavior. After a scuffle, the two settle their differences long enough for the curtain to pull back as Eggman comes forth from the shadows, stealing the Master Emerald right from underneath the team. Realizing he has been deceived, Knuckles opens a path to the ancient temples high above Angel Island that can help the team board the Death Egg, now relaunching due to the power of the Master Emerald. The aerial ruins of Sky Sanctuary is quite the sight indeed, a stage covered in beautifully etched floating pillars and golden runways that leaves you in awe. You manage to navigate the clouds, dodging Egg Robo infantry that is out for blood, swarming in droves. This stage becomes a nostalgia high as you encounter the rebuilt Mecha Sonic, now equipped with Eggman's latest tech, sporting a fresh paint trip that makes Metal Sonic look like child's play. You will face him through a gauntlet of encounters that utilize some of Eggman's most iconic inventions throughout the series, and giving you a sense of closure as our trilogy slowly comes to a climactic finish. Running up the crumbling stone ruins, Sonic will manage to hop on board the Death Egg, anticipating a final confrontation with Eggman. Deep inside the mechanical madness is a massive space station full of electrical fields and vacuum-tight chambers that will launch you all throughout. There's tons of unique wacky gravity sections that make for some fantastic game design and storytelling. You encounter multiple boss battles throughout, and each gets that much more challenging the further you go. The Death Ball in particular is such a fun fight, relying on gravity and physics to outsmart the Badnik, using his attacks against him. As we make our way to the center of the Death Egg, you face off an iconic battle with a giant kaiju Egg Robo. This fight starts out like a classic King Kong flick as this mechanical beast reaches up to grab a hold. Take his mechanical phalanges out one by one and he will retreat quickly. The first phase isn't terribly bad, but phase 2 is where things really get out of hand. The giant Egg Robo drops below the stage, rising up slowly towards Sonic, targeting in on our hero with a barrage of firearms that sends a heat wave across the screen. His laser cannon will soon charge, sending an energy blast from his chest cavity, which now houses the Master Emerald. Hitting the nose won't deal damage, but it will cause the mech to open its chest cavity, allowing you just enough time to get a few shots in. This is by far the hardest boss for me personally. I feel it's all about rhythm. The laser blast can only be dodged if Sonic is at the apex of his jump, so take sound cues and pray for the best. This round will take practice and repetition, but it can be done. After slaying the beast, the space station begins to destruct and Eggman initiates his exit strategy, taking off with the Master Emerald. However, wielding the 7 Super Emeralds opens our path into the final act. Sonic taps into his hyperstate, chasing down the Twisted Doctor's final weapon through space in a final Doomsday encounter. A climactic encounter occurs across an endless stretch through space, dodging the many asteroid fields throughout as you lock onto Eggman. Every move you make is critical due to your finite supply of rings that gradually deplete, gathering any if possible throughout space, all while homing in on this Doomsday device. This baby is fully loaded with launchers and turrets that fire on sight. It's integral to navigate past these hazards, attempting to intersect them with Eggman's mech. In time, the Egg Mech will begin deploying bombs and mines from his hard-boiled underbelly. Stick to the script and Sonic will emerge victorious, recovering the Master Emerald as the island slowly recovers, floating back up atop the skies. After Sonic and company return Angel Island to its glory, the team says their farewells. Shortly after though, Mecha Sonic managed to boot back online via a self-preservation mode. As it becomes self-aware once more, it presumably gives life to an already decommissioned Egg Robo, now programmed with an AI memory of Dr. Eggman. Now reinvigorated, this Egg Robo begins to fulfill his master's vision of world domination, beginning an all-out attack on the floating island. Playing through this all-new campaign with Knuckles is a blast. His skill set brings a refreshing take on the franchise, allowing him to break through walls, soar past enemy hazards, and scale the island's terrain, allowing for some creative new takes on level design and exploration. Many acts play out differently as Knuckles, and his skill set allows him to navigate areas inaccessible prior. Items also appear to be relocated across the island, and some enemies and hazards are removed or reworked throughout entirely. Some events play out differently to incorporate Knuckles' playstyle, as with Marble Garden's Egg Robo encounter. In this fight, the Egg Robo must get pretty creative in order to best our hero. Hell, Knuckles knows the island's layout so well, he manages to outsmart the Egg Robo at times and avoid encounters completely. As Knuckles makes his way to Sky Sanctuary, the curtains pull back and Knuckles discovers that Mecha Sonic has been puppeteering behind the scenes, acquiring the Master Emerald while busy battling the Egg Robo. As Mecha Sonic swoops in, he mistakenly makes scrap metal of his loyal servant. Enraged by Knuckles' presence, he quickly taps into the Emerald's power to achieve his own Super State. This battle isn't too difficult, and if you wait patiently for Super Mecha Sonic to attack, most of his projectiles can be evaded quite easily, leaving him open for attack. Pace yourself accordingly and he will go down for the count as the stage around you begins to collapse. As always, our ending is determined by your emerald hunting. If you fail to acquire the 7 Super Emeralds, Captain Savaho appears in the tornado and catches our battle-tested Echidna as his homeland falls back into the Mobius Sea, losing the Master Emerald to Mecha Sonic as he stands atop the Master Emerald conquering the land. However, if you succeed in solidifying a good future per se, Sonic will swoop in and catch his new bestie who holds strong with the Master Emerald, as Angel Island once again strives high above the skies. To this day, Sonic & Knuckles carries this aura about it. Fans of the franchise are still discovering new information on the project, whether this be through employee interviews, lost media, or prototypes. The game went through many developmental changes from its various alterations across prototypes to its release. It exemplifies how much lore is truly there. The lock-on technology was a test of the times, and regardless of what the so-called experts say about Sega's track record with hardware, you have to take risks in this life in order to succeed. The many add-ons to the Sega Genesis is a testament to this. Without the lock-on chip, Sonic 3 may have ended up radically different, and so much of the charm that's wrapped up in this tiny adapter comes by its unique capabilities that to this day left a lasting impression on our culture. There are many ways to play through these two games today. You can play them separately, and each holds up in their own right with tiny quirks about them that make them unique. You can also combine them and play through them the way intended with minor variances across the playthrough. There's options here, with 3 characters coming forth with distinct playstyles and ways to traverse stages. For this time in console gaming, there was nothing quite like it. Playing this game in its entirety is something remarkable, and although many consider them one complete game, I personally review them separately because both installments went through drastic coding changes upon release. Both went through many changes while being implemented together, and I think in order to fully appreciate them, they both need to be looked at separately and together. Today, if you purchase a Sonic collection, you are getting the combined experience with added content to the mix, which I'm never going to complain about as long as you include the original content, which there are a few exceptions here. I'll save that for later though. With that said, in a 2-part review now in the record books, we now close out the original Classic Series timeline. At least that's what Sega wants you to think. Funny thing however, here in the Origins collection, much like Sonic 3, we have another mystery buried in the sound test. I see the music for Sonic 1 through 3 and CD, but this. Knuckles 32X. Ah yes, at this time there was a new face that represented the brand moving into the mid-90s. In order to truly send off the Classic Series the right way, we would close things out in our finale with Knuckles Chaotix.